Now we're moving to Genesis, to a familiar story. The story of Noah from the New Revised Standard Version, Updated Edition. These are the descendants of Noah, and Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw that the earth was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I'm going to destroy them along with the earth. Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its width, 50 cubits. Its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and put the door of the ark in its side, making it with lower, second, and third decks. For my part, I'm going to bring a flood of waters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you, and of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark to keep them alive with you, and they shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every kind shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every kind of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this, and he did all that God commanded him. And the waters swelled on the earth for 150 days. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, and every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out of the ark by families. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be flood to destroy the earth. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Covenant. Ralph and I recently went kayaking on Lake Guntersville. It was a really still morning, so the water was like glass. He says that he paddles all the time, and I never paddle. He says I take pictures. No, I want you to know that I do paddle. But we saw lots of great blue herons and several hawks flying right over us. We saw bubbles under the water showing where fish were, and probably other turtles. The landscape was beautiful with lots of trees that had fallen into the water, creating new habitats. And there were flowers on the banks and holes in the riverbanks where the muskrats lived. Underneath our kayak was another world, lots of eelgrass. And eelgrass beds are important feeding areas for migrating birds. The eelgrass beds allow smaller creatures to survive and hide, so the small fry of larger fish species can duck out of the way of the larger fish that are looking for food. However, the natural cycle has become unbalanced due to the changing temperatures and the movement on the Tennessee River that created new colonies, brand new colonies of eelgrass. And it's so overgrown that the ducks and the geese and the snails that usually eat it can't consume all of it. And it was pretty difficult to paddle through a batch of it when you encountered it. Paddling around the lake, especially in a kayak, because we're so close to the water, we felt very connected to the wildlife around us and to everything in the water that was living in it. And more than once I was startled by a fish jumping or splashing in the water right next to me as a great blue heron yelled at us, "Wah!" for disturbing his fish hunting. When we explore God's provision of our natural world, we feel connected to the flora and the fauna all around us. And with this interconnection, seeing the web of life unfold, comes compassion for these creatures, a compassion that stems from our gratefulness to God for all that God has created, and maybe, just maybe, to an innate ability to carry the covenant of the ark with us. To carry the covenant of the ark with us. Noah and the ark is one of our most beloved Bible stories, and God sees evil in the world and seeks to end all evil. Yet he desires to keep Noah and Noah's family and the animals safe, so he creates a covenant with them. The covenant with Noah and his family is the first explicit covenant in the Hebrew Bible. Listen once again. For my part, I'm going to bring a flood of waters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. The biblical Hebrew word most often translated as covenant is berit. Can you say that? Berit? Berit. Awesome. And the preferred meaning of this Old Testament word is bond. A covenant refers to two or more parties bonded together. And we certainly hear of the bond of Noah and the animals to God when we hear the ending of the story. As for me, I'm going to establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living being in your care. The birds, the beasts, all the land animals in your care, all who have gone out of the ark, all the earth's animals. Friends, God didn't just covenant with humans. God covenanted with every living creature that is with you. We have been interconnected since the beginning of creation, since the beginning of time. We have a covenant between us and the natural world. We're not meant to be isolated. We were meant to multiply and be fruitful. Yet the command to be fruitful and multiply was given first to fish and fowl, not humans. Birds and animals are full partners in the covenant God establishes with Noah. Let's hear it again. As for me, I am going to establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living being in your care. This covenant makes itself known again in the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 11. And the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatted steer will be together, and a little boy will lead them. Also the cow and the bear will graze, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The nursing child will play by the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child will put his hand on the viper's den. They will not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. God designed us as creatures to connect and have compassion for each other. Let's look at our domesticated animals, dogs and cats. How many of you have a dog or a cat at home? A lot of people. Okay, so how many of you have experienced a time when your dog or cat approached you when you were crying as if they knew you were sad? How many of you have had the dog or cat literally come and lick the tears off your face? That happened to me. And one more. How many of you believe that your dog or cat understands human words? Anna's over there, right? We have a dog here, friends at home. It's a hearing dog. It's a service dog, but I'm just going to say something. W-A-L-K. Her head lifted. It's like ball. Oh, ball. She's quiet because she's working. See, humans and animals do communicate. There's this donkey in Nebraska that was adopted from a really bad situation and now is in a loving situation. Every morning, this donkey must go and find its new owner and get a hug. And it will bray and bray and bray until it gets a hug. Gratefulness? Who knows? But probably. We have a deep connection to animals and a spiritual awareness that we are part of the larger web of life, that we're members of a wondrous, complex interconnectedness. Look at our food systems, the food chain, predator and prey. Have you heard the story of what happened to Yellowstone Park in 1920? How many of you heard that story? In 1920, government policy allowed for the extermination of the Yellowstone gray wolf, who was the top predator of the food chain there. And then from there, everything went downhill. When the wolf became annihilated, the elk population exploded because now it had no predators. And because of this, the aspen trees and willow trees were overeaten, resulting in the loss of beaver populations who depended on the aspen and willow for food, shelter, and dam building. When the beavers disappeared, their dams disintegrated, leaving streams instead of marshes, and erosion due to the loss of aspen and willow affected stream beds, and marshlands were no longer there, and many water creatures suffered, like the amphibians and the fish and the songbirds. Without the wolves to eat them, the coyotes became the top predator and drove down populations of antelope and small mammals and birds and overate them. The birds and small mammals that were left behind suffered because the kill that was usually left behind by wolves, their main food source, was gone. A circle. You can see how removing one species can be life-threatening to that circle, the web of life. When they reintroduced the wolves in 1995, smart, Yellowstone was restored, and it now thrives as a healthy ecosystem. We are interdependent, and if one thing, just one thing, throws us out of balance, then God's world suffers. What about our bodies? I assume, as you probably assume, that we're 100% human, correct? We're all 100% human. We hope so. We're not aliens or anything strange, right? You hope not? Okay, so we're hoping we're 100% human. Well, not so fast. Biologist Joshua Pendick writes this: you are not 100% human. In 2016, the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel discovered that 56% of the cells contained in a human body are not human cells. Instead, they are bacterial. At least in terms of the number of cells, you are more bacteria than human. You are teeming with other life forms. The question arises, do we host the bacteria or do they host us? Indeed, some of the bacteria in your body are so intermeshed with you that they never leave the confines of your membranes. Mitochondria are not technically human, yet without them, we could not convert our glucose compounds into energy. They keep us alive. We are interconnected, even in our very cells. Which leads me to wonder about our spiritual interconnectedness. How are we spiritually connected to one another? Let's look to the Buddhists for their interpretation. In 1993, Harvard University lecturer Akeda Sensei spoke of the Buddhist notion of the interrelationship of all things, and this is what he stated. Buddhist philosophy. Each living thing manifests the enlightenment of which it is capable. Each contributes to the harmony of the grand concert of symbiosis. In Buddhist terminology, dependent origination describes these relationships. No person or thing exists in isolation. Every being functions to create the environment that sustains all other existences. All things are mutually supporting and interrelated, forming a living cosmos. A living cosmos. What modern philosophy might term a semantic whole. Human beings are far from being isolated entities. They are part of a larger, symbiotic fabric of coexistence, where because this exists, so does that, and because that exists, so does this. That is a conceptual framework through which Buddhism views the natural universe. Buddha taught that relationship to others and to the world, even to animals and plants, should be based on compassion. The goal is to develop genuine compassion, and this genuine wish for the well-being of another, in fact, for every living being throughout the universe. The Dalai Lama said, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." What about the Muslims from the Quran? We cannot remove ourselves from creation. We are part of it. The creation of the heavens and the earth is far greater than the creation of mankind, but most of mankind do not know it. See, friends, we are not only interconnected as species one to another, but also interconnected in our faith traditions. God granted us the gift of compassion and empathy, and in connection, whether it's connection to each other as humans, connecting to one another from different faith traditions, or humans connecting to other species of flora and fauna, we need each other. We are not created to be alone. We are not created to be alone. And I think that during our kayaking the other day, it really brought that home to me. Each species in that lake was somehow dependent on each other in some way. Dependent for a food source, for light, for the ability to hide. An interconnectedness that God created in his covenant with us and all living things. But I don't believe that God established covenant with us to have us forget about it. Remember that a covenant, by definition, is a bond, berit. A covenant refers to two or more parties bound together. You see, through us, God began a plan to restore creation. God intended shalom, harmonious, reconciled interrelationship between himself, his people, and the land and all that dwell in it. Notice how the arrows do not just go one direction. The arrows point both ways, a perfect ecology, depending on each other. And if we are truly meant to be bound together, then what are we doing to stay bound? How are we staying in shalom with the natural world around us? How are we staying in shalom with the natural world around us? So this week, the challenge is to do something in the natural world that benefits shalom, the peace between all things. Next week, I'm going to ask you for what you experienced in your shalom seeking, and if you felt closer to God during that shalom seeking with nature. That is what God intends, do you see? A perfect circle between God and the land and the people. It's what God intends. So let me read to you, to close, the Methodist Covenant Prayer. We're doing very interdenominational today. I am no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will, rank me with whom you will. Put me to doing, put me to suffering. Let me be employed for you or laid aside for you, exalted for you or brought low for you. Let me be full, let me be empty. Let me have all things, let me have nothing. I freely and wholeheartedly yield all things to your pleasure and disposal. And now, glorious and blessed God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, you are mine and I am yours. So be it. And the covenant now made on earth, let it be ratified in heaven. Amen.